Okay, we are recording now, and we're going to be starting on page 65. We're going to dive into the ninth letter. The ninth letter. And as always, before we do, does anyone want to lead off with anything that they've been thinking about, processing, struggling with, rejoicing over? Anything like that on tap? All right. Going once, going twice. So page 65, the ninth letter. This one is just to the same, which is the Reverend Mother that he's been talking to and corresponding with all throughout the letters that we've been reading here. And so he just the eighth letter was to the Reverend Mother, and I don't know if you recall that letter, but it was like a total how-to of contemplative practice. And it was engendered because the Reverend Mother obviously told him that she was really hitting a wall. She was just, not feeling it. She was not feeling like she was doing it right. However she posited it to him, he's coming back at her with just kind of a step by step. It's like every objection that you might have, every problem that you might have in trying to build and maintain a contemplative practice of your own, he's answering those. So, kind of dog-ear that eighth letter. If you are doing your own contemplative practice and you are running into these block walls, and go back, because he just takes it step by step and really does a great job of kind of addressing those. In this ninth letter, he's going to turn his attention now to another issue, obviously, that has been raised. So once again, these letters, kind of like the epistles in the New Testament, are like a Jeopardy game. You're getting the answers, but not the questions. So whatever was given to Brother Lawrence, he is responding to that, and we have to try to put it together because we're reading somebody else's mail, right? So here we go. Ninth letter to the Reverend Mother. Here is a reply to the letter I received from our good sister N. Please give it to her. She appears to me to be full of goodwill, but she wants to go faster than grace. Let's see. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think now that I remember, we started this letter and we are into the second page. But let me just go ahead and continue reading, and we'll start digging in the new stuff, because I think we just got in one paragraph, didn't we? And yes. Then I think that's what happened. Then we got derailed for the rest of the hour, which was a good derail. It was one of those rabbit trails that we always want to take, but I'm putting it back together in my mind. Here's a reply to the letter I received from our good sister. Please give it to her. She appears to be in full, gosh, Dave. She appears to me to be full of goodwill, but she wants to go faster than grace will allow. One does not become holy or a saint all at once. I recommend, or I commend her to you, your care. We ought to help one another with our advice, and still more by our good examples. I would be obliged if you will let me hear of her from time to time, and if she is very fervent and obedient. As commented last week, I love this because it just shows his pastoral heart. He really has care and concern for the people that have come to him, the ones that he is trying to coach and trying to bring along, and he's connected with them. And I love the fact that this young sister, I'm imagining she's younger, is impatient. She's trying to push this thing along. She's trying to push the rope, as we like to say, right? She's trying to push the rope. She wants this thing to go faster, but that's not the way contemplative practice works. And also, by the very fact that you're trying to evince an outcome, you're at odds with yourself from the beginning, because contemplative practice is about relinquishing outcome, letting go of everything except just the present moment and just your experience of it. And so bringing in those kinds of agendas, thinking about those things, being impatient, is all working against, because it's keeping the egoic mind fully engaged, and it is giving in to the egoic mind's illusion and conception of how everything works, instead of trying to step outside of it, let it go, and just experience. So it's so typical, though. I don't know if any of you have experienced that kind of impatience, but I certainly did. So I know what this young nun is going through. So he's going to continue now. Let us often reflect, my dear mother, that our only concern in this life is to please God. What can anything else be but folly and vanity? So just want to, once again, when he talks about pleasing God, what that sounds like to me is that we're back into performance mode. We need to please God in order for God to be pleased with us. You know, it's kind of a quid pro quo there. And we need to please God because that's the rule, and we need to be obedient to the rule. And if we do, we will get a reward of some sort. But in Brother Lawrence speak and in contemplative speak, pleasing God really comes down to entering into God's sebyana, as we've used that term in Aramaic before. God's will, God's pleasure, God's delight, God's deepest purpose. When we mirror God's pleasure and deepest purpose in our own lives, when we take our greatest pleasure in the same things that God takes pleasure in, then we are pleasing God. But it's not trying to do something that God would approve of in order to be approved of. It is taking delight and pleasure in the same things that God does. And that's a very different thing. Okay, one is coming from the outside in, trying to comply, trying to conform. The other is coming from the inside out. And it's a matter of transforming, not conforming. Okay, so it's really important that we get the difference between the two. Any thoughts, comments, questions on that? So the only concern in this life is to move into that kind of mirror relationship with God. What can anything else be but folly and vanity? There's no other end but God, to Brother Lawrence. Nothing else matters. There's no agenda. There's no outcome that he's trying to attain except to be in concert with God, in connection with God. You and I have been in the religious life for more than 40 years. Have we used them to love and serve God, who in his mercy has called us to that state for that purpose? In other words, he feels that God has called him into the religious life in order to please God, in order to become one with God, to mirror God. And have we used those 40 years well for that purpose? So for him, again, we've got this complete sense of self-denial. When Paul says in Galatians, it's not I who live, but Christ, God, who lives in me, it's the same sort of idea. Excuse me, I got this cough thing going. That he literally steps aside in terms of his own sense of identity, and God fills that void. God fills that place. And that is the pleasing of God that we're talking about here. It's the opposite of hurrying to any sort of goal or any sort of outcome. As I was trying to make the point last Sunday, that we don't really exist at all separately as an independent entity. We really only exist in connection with each other and with God. There is no real existence apart from the connection to everything that is, and of course God at the center. And the illusion of separation, the illusion of being completely independent, is just that. It's an illusion. It's a egoic construction that is going to die when we do, and then that unity will take the fore again if we are willing to see it. So this is what he's talking about. This 40 years of religious life, have they used the time and the years well? And now he's going to say, I'm filled with shame and embarrassment when I reflect on the one hand on the great graces which God has granted me, and which he continues without surcease to grant me, and on the other hand, how poorly I have used them, and how little I have profited from them on my way to perfection. So this is kind of classic Brother Lawrence, right? He's gonna bag on himself because that's what he always does. You know, on one hand, he's embarrassed because he's always receiving more from God than he can possibly relinquish. You know, no matter how much he tries to give away, no matter how much he downplays himself, he just keeps getting infilled more and more and more. And he's got this idea, this sense of shame and embarrassment that with everything that he's been given by God over these 40 years, and especially the last 30, because the first 10 were very difficult for him, he still feels he's so far from perfection. He's so far, you know, he knows his own faults. And that keeps coming to the fore with him. I suppose he's probably thinking, I should be further along than this, right? How many of you have said the same thing? I should be further along with this. I should have more, you know, going. I should have more peace and serenity and less anxiety and stress by now. You know, I should be, I don't know, further along. I should have a ministry. I don't know, whatever it is you think that is supposed to be at the end of this rainbow. If it hasn't materialized, then you're probably thinking along the same things. But as I said a few Sundays ago again, you know, Jesus didn't come to save us from sin. He came to save us from shame. Because once we get rid of the shame, then we can get rid of the sin, the sense of separation, that which keeps us from connecting with everyone and everything. But here he is back, you know, saying, yeah, I got all the shame and embarrassment because I haven't done more with all of these years of God just pouring out all of this grace, all of these wonderful gifts on me. But in the next paragraph, since in his mercy, he still gives us a little time. So he's talking back directly to the nun, right? In God's mercy, he still gives us a little time. In other words, we're not dead yet, okay? We got more time. Even though maybe I haven't used these last 40 years as I should, I still got a little more time. So let us begin in earnest. Let us make up for lost time. Let us return with complete confidence to that Father of goodness who is always ready to receive us lovingly. You know, this is what I keep coming back to with Brother Lawrence and David, you know, King David, my namesake, is that no matter how far off track they get, no matter how they think of themselves personally, they always just come back to God and just throw themselves at God's mercy. Something in them knows that God doesn't care about their imperfection because they just keep showing up and presenting themselves in their imperfection. And every time Brother Lawrence does that, he's given this download of grace and mercy and connection, even though he feels shame and embarrassment at the same time. It's really remarkable the way he processes this on two levels, on one hand, on the other hand. I love that about him. And I think that is a basic lesson for us. You know, no matter how we feel about ourselves, no matter how down we get on ourselves, to just keep in the back of the mind someplace, in the back of the heart someplace, that God doesn't care about all that stuff. That doesn't matter. Every time you approach God, you get the same thing that God always is, which is perfect love. If we could just learn that one thing, how would that change our attitude, our experience of life? He continues, let us renounce or let us relinquish, my dear mother. Let us renounce fully for his love everything that is not of himself. He deserves infinitely more. Let us think of him continually. Let us put all our confidence in him. Let us renounce fully for his love everything that is not of himself. You know, that's kind of back to Michelangelo's horse, right? Our perfect self is standing inside of us as if frozen in a block of ice. Our job is to remove everything that's not the perfect self. That's Michelangelo's horse. The same thing. And here it's remove, renounce everything that is not of God. Just let it go. Because God deserves infinitely more than we happen to be doing right now. Let us think of him continually. Let us put all of our confidence in him. I have no doubt but that we will soon experience the effects of so doing, or the effects of trusting, and that we will receive his graces in abundance, with which we can do all, and without which we can do nothing but sin. And that doesn't just mean doing unlawful things. It means just remaining with that sense of separation, with that sense of shame or embarrassment. Not unlawful, but separation. You know, it's so funny. I've been talking to so many people. I guess it's just our time of age. We're all falling apart physically. At least so many of us are. And we're also retiring, you know, and we're moving into these other places in life where we have a sense that we've left everything that gave us a sense of identity, meaning, purpose, relevance, you know, our ability to build anything or leave a legacy. So much of that is really affecting people as they move into different areas of life and seasons of life, and they're leaving everything that they've been doing for the last 40 years. Because our identity naturally connects to what we do, to our accomplishments, to our performance, to the recognition we get for those things, to the acquisition of things. But for Brother Lawrence, none of that stuff seems to matter. Now, yes, he was born poor. He was born, you know, to a non-aristocratic family. He never really had anything in life. You know, he was a soldier, and then he did a couple of odd jobs, which he said that he failed miserably at, and then he joined the Carmelites, and he was a monk until he died for the next 40 plus years. And so he didn't build anything up and then have to lose it, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't identified with things that he was doing at the time. And yet he still has this sense where he just kind of puts it all away. He's so self-effacing in that way. And in that simplicity, I guess, is the seed of what we're talking about here. That he's not carrying around so much of the false identity that is the looking over the shoulder that we all do. Remember when Jesus said, no one who puts his hand to the plow and then looks back is fit for the kingdom? I think that's the kind of thing that he's talking about. Can we just let the moment be enough? The furrow that we're plowing, can that be enough? You know, are we always pining for something more that's going to take us out of this moment? There's so many ways to look at this, but I think it's important that we do and then relate it to what we're going through right now. I mean, Bill's been doing that for us the last couple of times at bat, you know, really talking about, hey, yeah, but this all sounds great, but what about this in real life? And I think we all need to do that and relate this to what we're going through so that we can start to address the things that are giving us the most difficulty. Any thoughts about any of that?
Wow. It seems, you know, it's kind of weird, you know, when he at the top of the page and the bottom of the prior page where he said I am filled with shame and embarrassment when I reflect on the one hand of the great, I mean, just what he's not done throughout his life. And it would seem like he would be more appreciative of what God has brought him through, and that he would feel more of a sense that at least he's been faithful regardless of the work that he's done.
You know, that's interesting you say that, Bill. But if I step into Brother Lawrence's shoes, I would say that nothing that I have done that he would consider good or faithful came from him. All that stuff came directly from God. The only stuff that comes from him is the screw ups, because he stated that directly in several of his passages. And so he doesn't take credit for the good things that he's done.
It's
sees
not
that
so
all
much
as God.
that though. I mean, it's more reflecting on the fact that God has brought him through those things and that he's clearly learned from those things, but the effect on him seems to be shame and embarrassment. It's like he's not patient with himself. He's not even allowing God to love who he's been through this spiritual process. That's kind of the way it's coming across to me.
And I agree with you there in terms of what's actually written on the page, but then at the same time, it doesn't seem to bother him. He makes these statements that he has this shame and guilt, and yet he's most of the time, got happy feet, and he's experiencing this exhilaration that he has with God's presence, and he keeps coming back to it. It's not, remember we identified, Brene Brown defined shame as the fear of disconnection. Now, even Brother Lawrence talks about shame, and yet he seems to have absolutely no fear of disconnection. He keeps coming back to God, no matter what happens. And he connects with these people in his letters and obviously in his relationships, because these letters are a reflection of those relationships, an extension of them. And so even though he talks about shame, he's not living the kind of shame that we would see as disconnecting him from God and those around him. So there's something else going on here, even though he makes statements like that. And it's not that easy to parse it all out.
It seems, I mean, it reminds me,
Hold on just a second, Ken.
Go ahead.
it reminds me a little bit of, King David, where, he messed up so much throughout his life, but his heart was always one where wanting to return to God in a sense of alignment. And that's what was the motivation in his life when he kind of would come to his senses after he'd realized what he had done. And over time, his heart was just more and more aligned with God. And it feels like, as maybe disappointed as, I'll just speak for myself, I can be at the outcomes of certain periods of my efforts. The heart of it has been always at the heart of trying to be in alignment with God and where God may or may not be leading me. And how I measure that is where I get tripped up a little bit. But if I think about what the sincerity of my heart was in pursuing something or making certain decisions, I was navigating as best and I still do. I still try and just navigate as best I can when I do show up. Because like I said last week, I don't hear God talking to me.
Neither do I.
So when I hear Brother Lawrence, I hear him coming back to really, he's just reflecting more and more about being just at peace with being in alignment with his heart's desire for God, to be in alignment with what God is working through in his life as it comes at him.
So if we just keep screwing up, and as long as we keep showing up, really doesn't matter.
Well, it's kind of like, in the first half of life, you've had these courses of disciplines that you've had to exercise to be responsible in showing up for your job, giving your best, learning, having an attitude to be open and being sensitive to people around you. And it feels like at this stage of life, it's those things aren't defined very well anymore. And it's that lack of definition that is floating in the boat out in the middle of the ocean that it is so challenging for me in trying to get a sense of God's presence. And that the effect of intentionally carving out the time to quiet myself and meditate and just try and shut all the stuff off and let the worries of the world strip away so that I can be in a position at least to hear God more clearly and more sincerely. that has in a sense, a result of at least my heart is in the right place. Whether I know I'm doing the right thing doesn't matter, but at least I feel my heart is moving in the right direction. I'm willing to be changed and morphed in all these different experiences. But I still, where God leads, I don't know if he even does lead us. It's just totally up to me.
Well, you know my answer to that question. Yeah. God cares about the how and not the what.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
We get to choose the what's, but if we do them all in the right how, then we're always in the center of God's will. So it really doesn't matter what path we choose from God's point of view. As long as we're carrying the right how with it, we're doing exactly what we are supposed to be doing here. It only matters to us if we have a specific outcome in mind. And then there are right and wrong paths to that outcome.
Yeah.
But I'm sure most of us have experienced that even the wrong paths have sometimes given us more in terms of what we carry with us into this stage of life than the quote unquote right paths that we took, where the agenda was fulfilled. So yeah, I think we do. We are totally responsible for and able to make our own what choices. I don't know that God cares, but he sure cares about how we do what we do, because that'll either bring us into connection with him and with each other or not. And from my point of view, no matter what Brother Lawrence says, that sounds dysfunctional to me, that sounds unhealthy to me, he still seems to live in real connection. So either he doesn't mean what I think he means when he says some of these things, or he says them, but it doesn't matter because he still understands this deep connection of God. It's a little bit of an enigma, but I love the fact that it's there, because if he came across as always being in the center of God's grace and always a few feet off the ground, then I would not have any relationship with him. He would not resonate with me. The fact that this kind of balancing act is present gives me a lot of hope for my own life.
Yeah.
Dave, I saw my therapist on Monday, and I was talking about shame and guilt, and she said you can carry shame side by side with a healthy life. She said we can't eliminate the emotion of shame. It's impossible. She goes, I ate 3 cupcakes at my friend's birthday party this weekend, and I'm still feeling shame from that. She says, so she goes, eventually, because it's so small, the emotion of that incident will wear off. But the bigger the incidents, or the bigger the failures or things where you let yourself down, the longer the shame is going to remain. And she said the goal in life, I'm just repeating what she said, is not to forcibly try to eliminate the emotion of shame, but rather to learn to live with it in subjection to the better things, the fact that you learned from the experience, and the fact that there are better things in life. So her thing was shame should be in subjection to the rest of a healthy life, but that trying to focus on eliminating shame is an impossible task. That was her thing. So is it possible Brother Lawrence is just reflecting reality, which is we carry shame? I mean, and he carries it like the rest of us do, because I don't know anybody that doesn't continually, secretly somewhere carry some shame.
Well, shame as a felt emotion, we don't have control over our emotions.
That was her point.
Yeah, they're going to do what they do, and so yeah, it's a fool's errand and if you try to stuff your emotions, you're doing yourself more harm than good. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I do think that shame comes from learned responses. I mean, we have been acculturated and we have been programmed to feel shame from our earliest childhood. And if we change the programming, then we can change the shame, and we can change the felt emotion of shame indirectly, not directly. But as we start to change what we believe, those core beliefs that are continuing to cause us the shame, then we can let go, then it will dissipate on its own as we build new neural pathways and the old ones atrophy. Part of the problem that I think Brother Lawrence is up against is that the whole Catholic Western European Christian culture was one that just loaded shame on people, loaded guilt on people. I mean, it had the theological underpinnings of everything that he talks about. And so in that culture, which was everything. Remember, there was a very thin line between the religious and the secular in Western Europe at this time. The church was losing its influence, but it still had a very strong influence. And the whole continent was Christian and Catholic Christian until just 100 years before Brother Lawrence's time after the Reformation. So that culture was so strong, it was really hard to get away from it. And so it was difficult to come up with another mindset that would defeat the culture that was so permeating everything. I think he's doing that with his practice of presence. I think he is being saved from shame, even though he still expresses it, just because of the way he operates and the way that he is not fearing disconnection from God. All he has to do is think of him, and he's back into God's presence and back in the grace that God pours out. So there's a definite interesting mix in Brother Lawrence that continues to intrigue me. And so I don't think that we have to say that we've got to live with shame the rest of our lives. It does come off in layers, certainly. And I think there gets to be a point where shame is no longer debilitating to us. Maybe that was her point too, Ken. Like I've said so many times, we don't need 100%, we need 51%. We just need to get over that bar so that more often than not, we're operating in the light and we've changed our character at that point. And I think that's probably along the lines that your therapist was speaking.
Yeah, it was.
That's great. But I don't think we have to resign ourselves to just say, I'm going to live with shame for the rest of my life. No, as we really change those deeply held core beliefs, then the shame that's associated with those is going to go with it. Not immediately, you can turn the wheel of the ship a lot faster than the ship actually turns, but it will follow.
So I'm curious, what is the root cause of the feelings of shame? Is it because we judge ourselves and others judge us on the standard society have put, right?
Sure. It starts in the family of origin.
Okay, so this is
we talked about our shadow selves in a previous book. The shadow is not just what's dark and evil in our sight. It can also be what's really our strong suits and very positive things. But if they were disapproved of in the family as children, we learned that this was not acceptable, and so we suppressed it. So if you have a very gregarious and willful child, okay, they're going to be beaten down so that they comply like all the other good children do. But that gregariousness, that energy, that willfulness is part of their superpowers, right? They're going to have to rediscover that and own that shadow self. But they're going to feel shame at the same time because they were made to feel shameful. They were made to feel as if something was wrong with them. They were bad boys and girls who did bad things. And that's the way that it was treated in the family, in the school, in the society at large. And so different cultures and different societies have different shadow sides because they value and devalue different things. But those things that we were made to feel bad about are the things that we feel shame. And to pile that on to Brené Brown's definition of shame, those are the things that we fear that if people knew about us, they would disconnect from us. They would not want to have anything to do with us. So we keep them hidden and we keep projecting what we think is going to make us connectable. That's the shame at work.
So it brought to mind, I was reading Maya Angelou's, it's a short book, it's her autobiography. And I didn't know this. She said, I was a prostitute. And I said, oh my gosh, if I wrote, I wouldn't, if I was a prostitute, I would never write it because that to me is very, very shameful. But the fact that she wrote in a book and it's, oh, I couldn't connect it. Like there was no shame in her. But maybe because at her stage in life, she already had come to the point where, she was on the top of the heap, that she doesn't care. I don't know. It just, I was just surprised by that revelation. And I can,
That's really interesting, Ellen. I didn't know that about her.
Yeah.
I haven't read the biography, but
Yeah.
you think about Brennan Manning, who is very open about his alcoholism and the really seedy, gnarly places that put him, including a gutter in the morning in New Orleans, laying in his own vomit with an empty bottle next to him, and a friend having to come and drag him off to rehab yet again. I think, we do get to a point we are willing to talk about these things and open up. There's a saying in AA that we're only as sick as our secrets. And so the fifth step is to talk to someone about your fourth step, that fearless moral inventory that you take. The next step is to actually tell someone about it. So you're telling them your most shameful secrets. And there's liberation in that, because you find out that it doesn't disconnect you from people. Now, Maya has obviously found out that even talking about her past and what she may consider failings in her past has not disconnected her from people. My respect for Brennan Manning only increased after he was so open about his problems in the past. It didn't decrease. He was more connectable to me, not less, because he let his vulnerabilities and his frailties show. And I think that is what is going to unwrap the shame for us, is when we actually do just let ourselves be seen as we are and realize that some people may reject us, but most people won't. And then that just diffuses the shame.
but I was thinking also more where, Brennan Manning and Maya Angelou, maybe they were at the stage in life where it says now it's safe to do so, because now at my stage in life, certain groups will reject me, and their point is, I don't care, but certain people will not reject me. So there's that security already, or that safety.
Ellen, I think you're right there, because
Right?
it's like people don't, in our younger years, we had role models that we put on a pedestal in a sense. And when you get older, you realize all of us go through stuff. And I think our judgment kind of melts away a little more as we're older, and we're more forgiving of people like Dave's talking about with Brennan Manning, because we don't have to keep this image up in our Christian circles that so many, there's a group dynamic in so many of our churches, like it or not, whether we don't want to just dump on somebody with our problems, but we also are not open with what we're going through while we're going through them. It's not until after we've gotten through
Right.
them, we start to, like you said, get to the top of the heap or be an
Right.
author or something. And that's probably what was the most humiliating for Brennan Manning
Yeah.
in those regards. But I think it's we're a little bit more empathetic and understanding. It just seems like you really can't get through to somebody who's never gone through any hardship and share with them what you're going through, no matter what it is. If they've never gone through it, they just don't relate to it. And then it feels shameful, because it's like, well, what's the matter with you? I mean, how many of us are parents? It's like, train up a child in the way you should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. Well, guess what? Maybe so, but they go their own way. And we have no control over it.
Well, and didn't Frank Billman used to always say too that, if you're in AA, nobody wants to listen to somebody who's never been through anything. They want to hear the guy that's been through the ringer and has come back up, and how he did it, and what kind of, crap he went through. I mean, they really want self-disclosure is more powerful, I think, in some cases than anything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anybody who's in AA who doesn't have a past that's checkered either is a liar or doesn't belong in AA. So we're talking about just being honest here, you know,
Right.
it's just,
They'll
why are
say,
you here?
Tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them much. But I would like to submit the fact that, you know, Dave alluded to the 5th step and the 12-step programs, and that's where you you admit to yourselves, to God, and to another human being the exact nature of your wrongs.
Mhm.
And I've heard many a story, I'll just say, put it that way, where people have talked about the horrible things that they've done in their past, and they're sharing that with their sponsor or their spiritual advisor. And then they're met with a response from that person of, is that it? Is that all? Or, you know, that doesn't come close to what I've done and what I've experienced. And I would say that with regard to Brother Lawrence here, he's sharing in a bit of a maybe third person, a little bit of a quote unquote 5th step with this Mother Superior, and I think he believes that even though he's had a life that he's experienced in his life some really bad stuff that he's done and terrible things he did when he was at war as a soldier. That stuff is there, but I think there's a level of forgiveness and acceptance of what he's done, and that he's given that, and that God understands. He's saying to me that God understands it. He said that, you know, God deserves infinitely more than what we've given him in the past. And then it says here, he deserves infinitely more. Let us think of him continually. Let us put all our confidence in him. I mean, and that's huge for me. It says, I've no doubt that, but that we will soon experience the effects of so doing, and that we will receive his graces in abundance, with which we can do all, and without which we can do nothing but sin. And he's talking about being released from all that guilt and shame. But if he doesn't acknowledge that, he's really bound to continue to do those terrible things. But in the acceptance and understanding of his relationship with God, and you know, and within the purview of Catholicism, where they were talking about guilt and shame and this abundance of guilt. Now, I mean, I was raised with a lot of guilt, and I got to the point in life where I thought that was a lot of nothing but hot air. I did enough stuff. I did enough things in my life where, I mean, I certainly didn't go to war and do bad things to somebody else, but the old saying, you know, we don't have our own cross to bear. And I think as I'm seeing it, I'm just trying to share with her that even though we have a cross to bear, you don't have to drag it through the mud.
Oof.
And I also want to make sure that we move past sin just as doing bad things to people, doing unlawful things, and take it all the way to its true meaning, which is the sense of separation from which comes all the bad things, right? I mean, it's because we feel separated, it's because we feel cut off, it's because we don't feel any kinship with others that we can do the things, the bad things to each other that we do. Because when we feel connected to each other, we don't do those things naturally. And so that is what God is saving us from, the sense of disconnection, the shame, that then leads to all of the dysfunctional things that we see. on our news screens and in our lives and so on and so forth. And so it is that connection that is everything. And that's what Brother Lawrence has learned instinctively to return to, no matter what happens or how disconnected he gets or how much he wallows in his sense of shame and embarrassment and guilt. He comes back to the connection. And that's what saves him, is the connection. You know, what John just read, you know, let us put all our confidence in him. Think of him continuously. You know, that is how he keeps coming back, keeps getting back up again. And yet he isn't afraid to go ahead and just tell this Reverend Mother, or probably whoever is listening, you know, this is who I was. This is how I functioned before. And this is how I continue to function. But it doesn't matter, not to God.
I think one of the great lessons that I have learned or am learning is that when you have a disagreement with somebody and they dislike you or whatever, that's a reflection of who they are more than it is a reflection of who you are.
Mhm. And one other thing, you know, Ellen, I'm not sure that I was understanding you correctly, but if you were saying that maybe somehow it was now safe for
Yes.
Maya Angelou and for Brendan Manning because of their status in life, because they were famous authors and
Yeah.
renowned figures to come clean with this stuff. And for the rest of us, it's not.
Right.
You know, I just want to say that, you know, in my 20 plus years now of working in recovery, I've watched person after person come clean with the most shameful things that they have done in their lives. And they didn't have the advantage of a lifelong career or celebrity status to fall back on. They became willing to just let themselves be seen and to let people know who they were, because to carry that around any further was more disconnecting than they could bear. And I think we don't need to have that celebrity status to finally get to the point where we're just willing to let people know, this is what I've been through, this is what I've done, but that's not who I am anymore, or at least that's not who I'm trying to be anymore. You know.
But see, that's the thing too to me, because I'm doing also step studies and we're now in step 8, but with step 4 and step 5, so I have my support group, we feel safe there. But I cannot just go to my co-workers and tell them about and then they start gossiping and they start doing this. You go, oh my gosh, Ellen did it. I'm just saying too, it's with the discretion.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Not
safe
everybody needs to
place.
know everything, and not everybody's ready
Uh-huh.
to hear it. You know, obviously,
Right.
these people we're talking about, Maya Angelou and Brendan Manning, have huge megaphones. They're speaking to the world at large, and they actually have a following that is large enough for that. And so whatever they say is going to go to everybody. It's going to go to the media. But we as individual private citizens, you know, we don't need to be coming clean with everybody. And yes, we do need to make sure that what we're sharing is being shared in a safe enough place and in the proper setting. So yeah, we don't have to take out a billboard. No.
And Dave, I would have thought originally when you were saying that I'm always thinking that people in the second half of life, the older we get, the less we care, soulful we become, that kind of thing. But you've probably seen some young people that have maybe come clean on this stuff, maybe depending on what they've been through in their lives, that have just decided, I need to come out with this. This has got to come out now, even though I'm 25 years old or, 30 years old. I always think that's reserved for the older groups that have been through it all. And, we don't want to sweat the small stuff. We don't really care anymore. But I imagine there's some young people that have probably had to deal with this in a very difficult way. And they decided to come clean too. Is that not true?
Absolutely it is. That's what I'm saying. You know, kids in their 20s, kids in their 30s, you know, that go through the same process. I mean, anyone who's a 12-stepper here knows. I mean, that's the culture of the group. But to Ellen's point, that is a safe place to share, or
Right.
it should be a safe place to share. And it's anonymous for a reason, because it's contained within the group. You know, all these things are true. And so, you know, to Ellen's point, yeah, you're not just going to go to work or to church and open up about stuff that you know that they're not prepared to handle. You know, and so, yes, you're doing it among people where it's safe. Now, and I suppose what you're saying, when you have one of these major authors or these world figures who is willing to open up, well, everybody's going to get it. But they have their reasons for doing so. And I think you're right, Kathy. You get to a certain age and these things matter less, you know, than they did when we were younger. And I think that has to do with a lot of the relinquishment that we go through in the second half of life to the identity that we have acculturated ourselves to, that we're guarding so tenaciously. You know, at a certain age later in the second half of life, we were able to let go of that. We don't have to
Deconstructing.
defend it anymore, right? There's how much freedom is there in that? That you don't have to carry that mask around and defend that. That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish the letter here so we can say that we actually accomplished something tonight. This last paragraph. We cannot avoid the dangers and perils with which life abounds without the actual and unceasing help of God. So here's Brother Lawrence again, stating what he always does. You know, anything that you would say was good that I've done, it's always God who's doing it through me. And that's kind of what Jesus said. You know, I don't do anything of my own initiative. It's God doing it through me. We cannot avoid the dangers and perils with which life abounds without the actual and unceasing help of God. Let us ask his help continually. How can we ask for his help unless we are with him? How can we be with him except by thinking of him often? How can we think of him often except by forming a holy habit of doing so? Now, you will tell me that I'm always saying the same thing to you. It's true. I do not know of an easier or more appropriate method, and as I practice no other, I recommend it to everybody. Anticipating her objection, you know, he's a Johnny One Note. He is always saying the same thing. We must know before we can love. To know God, we must often think of him. And when we come to love him, we shall also think of him very often. For our heart is where our treasure is. Let us ponder this often and deeply. So this, you know, there's that whole thing about, are we really acting our way into right thinking, or are we thinking our way into right acting? Right? Have you heard that one before? You know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg here, the cart or the horse? You know, do we change our thoughts in order to change our actions, or do we change our actions in order to change our thoughts? And really, clinically speaking, it's we act our way into right thinking. You know, now we can say we change our thoughts, but we can't change the unconscious thoughts until we act repeatedly in a certain direction. And that will actually change that unconscious wiring. And he's sort of going in the same thing here. You know, how can we ask for his help unless we're with him? How can we be with him except by thinking? How can we think of him often except by forming the holy habit of doing so? But then he says, we must know before we can love, and to know God, we must often think of him. And when we come to love him, we shall often also think of him very often, because our heart is where our treasure is. So it kind of goes both ways. By thinking of him often, by bringing him back into awareness, and this doesn't just mean thoughts with words, it means coming back into awareness, continually bringing God back into awareness throughout the day, whatever we're experiencing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we become habitually bringing God back into awareness, that is going to have effects on us, and we're going to love him more. And as we love him more, then we're going to become more aware of God in all of our moments as well. And so the two work hand in glove, and they reinforce each other. But we can't manufacture emotions, as we just talked about. But what we can do is practice the habit of bringing God into awareness all throughout our waking day. And that's going to have its effect on us. So that's the simple thing that he does, continually bringing God back into his awareness, where that's actual worded thoughts in his mind, or just an awareness of presence. I don't know. He says it as thinking of him, but to my mind, that means awareness without thinking. But however it is, to bring God continually back, that's the one thing that we do, that Johnny One Note thing. If we just keep coming back to that, as Jesus said, seek first the kingdom and God's righteousness, and all else will be added. It's that kind of idea, I think. I know we don't have time right now, but maybe we can pick up next week. If this line to you seems true, he says, we must know before we can love. And I just put a note in the margin there, yes, is that really true? We must know before we can love. Is that always the direction of it? Does the arrow always point that way? Or
How you
is
ought to
there
do
something
prayer.
else? Yeah, but we're not going to have time to get into that one because that could take us some time. But I'm gonna mark that to bring that one up next week.
Forming a holy habit. Can you circle that one too?
Holy habit, sure.
Forming a holy habit.
Okay, so I'm going to say holy habit we want to talk about, and also
Is that
know before love. Okay, so
Oh, I see it.
yeah, we can hit those before we dig into the 10th letter next week because we're already past time. But all right, hey, we did it. Got through another letter.
Nice.
And thanks again for the discussion and everybody coming clean. And that's always important. This is a safe place. So we can do that here. It is wholly appropriate that we do that here. All right, we don't have Scotty with us to pray out. Does anybody want to do that task tonight?
I did last week.
Did you last week?
I did. William volunteered me.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, who did? Oh, Danielle did it last night. That's right. You did it last week. Danielle did it last night. So who would like to tonight?
I'll do it.
Go for it, John.
Thank you, Father, for the blessings that you bestowed upon us this evening and in our lives. We ask for continued guidance and care in all that we do. And with your blessings, we will move forward in our life and in our days and our nights and in our entire our lives in the knowledge of your love for us and our love for you. We sincerely pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Beautifully done. All right, everybody. Randy, hi. Didn't even get a chance to say hi to you. And Ellen, I didn't even properly get a chance to say hi to you. You've jumped in, but at least we heard from you. And doesn't your hair look nice tonight?
Thank you.
There you go. Anyway, thanks everybody. So we'll see you on Sunday morning. All right. So have a good few days and we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey, there's Frank. Hi, Frank.
Hi,
Bye, buddy.
Bye, Frank.
Yeah. And
Well-
Jordana and Linda too. I'll see you guys on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay,
And I
great.
heard your boyfriend's coming, Jordana?
Yes, he is.
Oh, fantastic. It's always good to see him again.
Yeah, so he's looking forward to seeing you. I said, you're gonna see Dave in there, and he goes, oh, I'm so excited to see them. They're so loving. They're just the greatest people ever. And I'm like, yes, they are.
Okay. Well, I'm glad he's coming. We'll see you all on Sunday.
All right, bye,
Okay.
Linda.
Bye, everybody.